Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on India's national broadcaster Doordarshan about India's foreign policy, its major relationships, bilateral and regional, and also India's impact on the emerging world order and how India is playing a positive role as an emerging global leader. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking up a very important growing bilateral relationship that has just been upgraded to the level of a strategic partnership. This is between Egypt and India. Great civilizations going back several thousand years of connections, but in modern times, in contemporary times, there have been phases when the relationship has not gone as well as it should have. But now finally we are making amends for it and upgraded it to a strategic partnership, and this has a huge value both for Egypt and for India. So what does all this entail for the two countries and also for the respective regions in which we are located, North Africa and West Asia and South Asia? This is the subject of today's episode, and to understand the dynamics of this bilateral relationship, I have a very special guest joining us via Zoom, Dr. Eman Ragab. Dr. Ragab is head of the Security Research Unit at the Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies in Cairo. She's a noted commentator and writer on international issues and a scholar, and also teaches at the American University in Cairo. Dr. Ragab, such a pleasure to have you on Indian Diplomacy.
Hi, it is my pleasure to be with you today, Professor Sreeram.
Dr. Ragab, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was the chief guest at India's Republic Day celebration in 2023, and this has elevated ties to another level. It was a big honor for the Egyptian head of state, and also for us here in India, we have discovered the importance or rediscovered the importance of Egypt like never before. The upgrade to strategic partnership is something that is worth celebrating and also understanding and unpacking. So we have had diplomatic relations for 75 years, and yet it's only in 2023 that we have finally made it a strategic partnership with lots of elements. So I'd like you to first begin by talking about the importance of India from a strategic perspective. Why is it a strategic partnership for Egypt now?
Well, I think the main reason for upgrading relationships in 2023 is driven by the geopolitical and geostrategic shifts taking place in the Indo-Pacific area as well as in the MENA region. And to be more clear, in my opinion, I may mention three main factors that would explain why the upgrading is going on and taking place in this year. The first reason is the increasing importance of Indo-Pacific region and the policies of Japan, China, and the United States. And this actually is creating opportunities and challenges for any country that is interested in promoting a more peaceful and secure world. And here, India and Egypt are adopting this type of foreign policy attitudes. The second reason is related to the increasing importance of maritime security, not only in the Indian Ocean area, but also in the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, to assure the passage of or the safety of the commercial vessels and oil vessels moving around, reaching the European and the American markets. And Egypt is playing a key role in this area of maritime security, especially after the announcement of the commandment of Egypt of the what is called the CTF 153, which is the combined task force led by the United States, and that is responsible for securing the passage in the Red Sea area. And maritime security is a priority for India also in order to expand its commercial relations with African and Middle Eastern countries. The third factor is more related to the new repositioning of Egypt and India, not only in their geographically close areas, but also in terms of their role on the global level. Having Egypt on one side trying to adopt this looking east policy, where India is residing at the core of such attitude, And from the other side, India is trying to reposition itself, as you mentioned by yourself at the beginning, in the introduction of this interview, to be one of the leading countries on the global level. And doing that require a specific and a unique presence of India, both in Africa and in the MENA region. And I think Egypt can play the role of the gateway for India to do that in these two countries.
Dr. Ragab, points well taken. Indeed, location as well as mutual convergence of interests explain this shift to a strategic partnership. But on the security aspect, I mean, you are a researcher on military affairs. There is a lot of talk about expanding our cooperation. We are doing joint exercises, our two armed forces. The Egyptian contingent even marched at India's Republic Day parade. And there's also a possibility of India potentially selling Egypt important weapon systems. And also there is the angle of the counter-terrorism cooperation to check radical Islamist extremism and terrorism and jihadist groups. So this area is a big growth area, isn't it? I mean, this is where Egypt and India, in the past, it was not as high as right now. And I think they have seen that there is value. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was saying that whatever we do to help de-radicalize populations and to stop cross-border terrorism is going to benefit both our regions. And we know that the flow of the jihadist groups has been from the Middle East to South Asia and vice versa. So I think that area is something of deep concern for both sides, and the leaders have also highlighted it. And that is where I think the future lies, isn't it? And so how does Egyptian defense establishment view the ongoing security cooperation?
From my personal point of view, in reference to the defense aspect of your question, we need to put what we are discussing in context. According to the Global Firepower Index of the year 2023, India is ranked as number 4 in terms of the strength of its armed forces. Egypt, according to the same index, is ranked to be the leading Arab and African country in this index. So we are talking about partnership between two leading defense countries in an area that both has unique experiences. To explain and elaborate more of what I mean by that, I may mention the 3 main aspects of partnership that has been tested in the past few months, and I think would continue to scale up after the announcement of this strategic partnership. The first example is related to the co-production of specific military equipments. And here there is an interest from the Egyptian side to localize and to expand the joint production programs with countries other than the United States that remained since the 1970s the main leading country in the joint production of military and weapons in Egypt. India is a partner for Egypt in producing one of the multitask aircrafts known as Cairo 200. And I think this line of partnership might continue and could be scaled up in the coming few years. The second example is related to what you already mentioned about the joint exercises and maneuvers. And also, I think that the Special Forces joint exercise that is taking place while we are talking here in India is a good example of the different platforms through which Egyptians and Indians can share experiences, build their capacities in confronting specific security threats, including terrorism and other types of non-traditional security threats that both countries are encountering in the current period. The third example is more related to the advancement of defense technology on the Indian side, where Egypt is thinking of taking benefit, sharing interest in that area with the Indian side. And here I point directly to the advancement of the Indian technology in the area of missile productions, early warning systems, along with specific types of fighters like the what we call the LCAT
Light
JAS,
combat aircraft.
that Egypt has an interest in, exchanging experiences, adopting the Indian technology, and its national project that aims at localizing the weaponry industry. So these are the three examples that are telling us how the defense industry could be a sector of partnership between India and Egypt in the coming few years. In reference to your second part of the question related to terrorism, I think also it is very important to put in context what does terrorism mean for Egypt and India nowadays. From the Indian perspective, as I understand it, terrorism remains one of the main threats to its national security and to its regional rule and the surroundings. For Egypt, it has been witnessing for years the threat of terrorism that is driven by religious, political reasons in particular. Egypt and India, they agree on specific principles when it comes to collectively and jointly standing against terrorism activities on the global as well as regional levels. One of these principles is condemning the usage of religion by terrorist entities to justify their unlawful use of violence and different type of rhetorics of hate, etc. Second, Egypt and India agree on the principle of condemning any country that aims at harboring or providing a safe haven or a political legitimacy for terrorist and radical organizations, whatever the reason that would drive those countries to do so. Also, Egypt and India agrees, as we understand from the both countries' activities on the level of the Shanghai Organization or at the level of the United Nations, that financing terrorism should be curbed, that transnational logistic networks that terrorists are feeding up and relying on should be, destroyed in order to contain the strength and the resources that terrorists are using. The fourth principle, and I think here is India is having a lot of things to add to, is using advanced technology in order to curb the activities of terrorist organizations on social media platforms and in the deep web, as well as in using blockchain technology in order to secure finance to their unlawful activities. And I think what is India has managed to achieve in the area of advanced technology can benefit a lot Egypt's plans to add this technological aspect to its counter-terrorism efforts on the national, regional, and international levels.
Dr. Ragab, points well taken. On the question of the United States, and you mentioned the defense relationship with the US, I'd like you to also weigh in on the question of the I2U2. This is a new grouping which India has joined alongside the US, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel. And of course, Egypt has positive diplomatic ties with all these three countries. And there is a lot of talk that there is some kind of a Indo-Abrahamic alliance that is going to be formed, as per the Abraham Accords that have been happening in the Middle East, where a lot of Arab countries are following Egypt and are recognizing Israel. So do you think that is also part of this emerging strategic partnership, that it could be I2U2 plus Egypt, and could we all jointly work to counter shared threats that you just mentioned?
Let me, rephrase a point that I mentioned very briefly, but it's very linked to your question. I mentioned that Egypt now is adopting what you may call looking east policy. And part of that is to engage in any multilateral regional security architectures that is being built up or revived in the Asian part of the world. And for that reason, you may understand why Egypt joined the Shanghai Security Cooperative Organization, why Egypt has requested joining the BRICS. And within that context, what you mentioned regarding the possibility that Egypt may join or try to cooperate or coordinate with the I2U2 framework is possible. actually. And the possibility of this point is strengthened and supported by the fact that Egypt has very good relations with India, the United States, Israel, as well as the United Arab Emirates. Second, Egypt has many things to add to the type of issues that has a priority in this framework, including the food security issue, the usage of advanced technology in enhancing security resilience, etc. Also, Egypt is having a strong security relations with Israel that is now trying to expand and scale up its security cooperations with many Arab countries, including the UAE, which is a member of the I2U2.
So there's
within that
potential
in
for
mind,
this.
thinking of would Egypt join or play a role that complements the efforts that is being done in this framework, my personal response would be yes. And there are many things that would support such a course in Egyptian foreign policy.
Right. Now, viewers, we've heard about the security and the defense and the geostrategic relationship thus far, but there's also an emerging focus on economic cooperation with Egypt. Trade volumes have risen significantly. India has supported Egypt during the as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war, when Egypt had a severe shortage for wheat. India was stepped up and supplied wheat to Egypt, and Egypt also helped India when we were buffeted by the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with remdesivir and other medical supplies. So there's also a lot of focus now on in the two countries to ramp up trade and investment ties. And on this, I have a very exclusive comments by Dr. Hebatallah Adam. She's an Egyptian scholar who teaches at O.P.Jindal Global University. And let's hear her on the economic partnership and how we can enhance it further. Let's first hear her and continue the discussion with Dr. Ragab.
From an Egyptian perspective, India can help Egypt in developing its manufacturing sector by providing access to Indian markets, technology, and by increasing Indian foreign direct investment, particularly in prominent sectors such as pharmaceutical, medical equipment, healthcare, technical education, renewable energy, especially in green hydrogen and green ammonia, automobiles, and information technology and communication. In addition, India can provide Egypt with technical support, training, capacity building programs in key areas such as agriculture, healthcare, education, and infrastructure. India also is an excellent example of how to achieve financial inclusion, and it would be advantageous for Egypt if India shared this knowledge and technology and assisted in promoting Egypt's digital financial transformation. Now, let's speak from the other side, from an Indian perspective. Due to its strategic location at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe, Egypt can serve as an essential gateway for India to access Africa and West Asia. Egypt is a cornerstone of the Arab world and a key regional leader on the African continent. It is also a major hub for trade, investment, and transportation on a number of axes, including the Suez Canal, which is the main commercial route for India. In addition, Egypt's strong diplomatic ties with Africa and the Arab nations can assist India in enhancing its footprint in both regions. Finally, Egypt is a major source of energy for India, offering access to oil and gas resources that may be exploited to fulfill the expanding energy needs in India.
Viewers, you just heard Dr. Hebatallah Adam laying out how the economic partnership can deliver benefits to our people. So Egypt, 110 million people, India 1.3 billion people, large developing countries. And I'd like to take up Dr. Ragab again on this. Dr. Ragab, we just heard from an Egyptian economist about what all the two countries are gaining from each other through strengthening economic partnership. One particular element has been spoken about a lot, which is the Suez Canal. And the Suez Canal economic zone that the Egyptian government is developing, and the joint statement talked about how India could be given certain key land in the Suez Canal economic zone in order to enhance investments there. And green hydrogen is an area that we just heard already. An Indian company, Renew Power, which is based here in Gurgaon in India, has committed to invest $8 billion in manufacturing green hydrogen at the Suez Canal economic zone. There's a lot of talk that the Chinese have already come there and have set up and are doing a lot of economic activities. So why should India be behind? So your thoughts on this economic relationship, and how do you see India contributing to Egypt's growth? I mean, already it's been mentioned, but your views on this, please.
Well, from a security perspective and a strategic perspective, I think actually personally that economic partnership might rely on three main pillars. The first pillar is related to information technology industry. And it is, I think, it needs to gain a priority in India-Egypt economic partnership because of many reasons. One of them is that Egypt is having many national projects that aims at mainstreaming information technology in every aspect of governmental and private sector activities. And India here is a good model to draw lessons from in this particular area. Also, Egypt is having this plans of building data center, huge or mega data centers, as well as cloud computing technologies on the national level, and India is very advanced in this area. Also related to technology, the production of chips is having a priority in Egypt's economic plans in the coming few years, and India could be a partner in doing so. As you mentioned, Egypt relied on the Indian wheat in order to contain the food crisis caused by the Russian-Ukrainian war. But there are many things that Egypt can learn from India in the agricultural sector. For example, the sustainable agricultural value chain that India managed to build on the national level in cooperation and in partnership with many international donors. The community-based natural farming policies that Egyptian farmers could learn lessons from in order to sustain the production of the agricultural sector.
Food and energy are critical things for developing countries, and that's where I think there is a lot of synergy between Egypt and India that could be. It's not about regimes ultimately, it's not about leaderships, it's ultimately about the people, isn't it? And that's the key for this relationship to go forward. And on this aspect, viewers, I have a very interesting exclusive video comment by Dr. Hana Fayyad. She teaches at the American University in Cairo, and she's talking about Egypt and India, the people-to-people connection and how important it is. Let's hear her and then continue the discussion.
Egyptians are fond of India, the land of wonder, culture, and great civilization. The affection towards India is expressed in many ways, including the naming of 3 Egyptian streets after Indian leaders, Mahatma Gandhi, Pandit Nehru, and Dr. Zakir Hussain. The Maulana Azad Center for Indian Culture was established in 1992 to promote the Indian culture in Egypt. Also, Saut al-Hind, which means the Voice of India magazine, Arabic magazine, published by the Indian Embassy in Cairo, was first published in 1952. Egyptians and Indians share many things in common. They are both family-oriented societies where everyone is considered family. Also, Egyptians and Indians share kindness. There will always be someone to help you out in Egypt and India. Not to mention the great hospitality that both populations share. There's a lot of unity and tolerance in Egypt and India, which is quite inspiring in my opinion. You'd never feel alone in either Egypt or India. People are actually one of the biggest reasons for which you would love those countries.
Viewers, you just heard from Dr. Hana Fayyad, the Egyptian scholar, and she says you will never be alone in Egypt or India, and there's community and there's society. We have developing countries with traditional backgrounds. Dr. Fayyad, Dr. Ragab, Dr. Fayyad was talking about how at the level of people there's so much love and affection for each other, and going back a long way. You know, Prime Minister Modi was saying that the trade between the two countries was happening 4,000 years ago. And we continue to do that now in a more advanced way. We are doing maritime transportation agreements and all these things to bring the people and the business communities together. So your last words on, you know, how ordinary Egyptians feel about India, you know, please tell the Indian audiences your impressions of how India is perceived there. And President Sisi was talking about tourism and the need to enhance tourist flows much more than what is at present. Before the pandemic, just about 50,000 Indians had traveled to Egypt, but he wants much more, and we want, you know, direct connectivity and all these things to improve. So last word on people to people and how we can bring the two great civilizations together.
From my point of view, the Indian culture is one of the favorite Asian cultures to the ordinary Egyptian citizen. And you can touch it in any visit that you may pay to Cairo. You will find the restaurants serving Indian food everywhere in Cairo. You will find in some of the touristic places, they have this corner where you can wear Indian outfit and take like a memorial picture of you and your family, along with the consumption of the Bollywood movies that is everywhere on TV in Egypt. Not only the family issue that has been mentioned by your guest, but also other values related to honesty, integrity, kindness to foreigners, hospitality, forgiveness, and other positive values that is needed by the Indians and the Egyptians, not only to curb and to weaken the radical and terrorist discourse, but also to build a more strong, sustainable national identity that would guard and provide a driver for the country to continue its sustainable development projects and to strengthen its relations and partnerships with other countries.
Thank you, Dr. Ragab. I think the audience knows now that Egypt and India, the link is expanding. We may have different political systems, but if we go back in time and then bring it to the present times, I think there's a lot that is continued, and we have to cherish that great heritage and build upon it. And that's the message also from the leaderships of the two countries. I want to thank Dr. Eman Ragab for sharing wonderful original insights for our audience. Thank you so much, Dr. Ragab, for being on Indian Diplomacy.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
So viewers, the point is Egypt and India have upgraded to a strategic partnership, and there are many elements in it. Do think about all the aspects that make a special relationship, and given the spirit of South-South cooperation, India has also invited Egypt to be a guest in the G20 summit this year that India is hosting, and the two hope to coordinate further on the plank of South-South cooperation. So much is going to happen with Africa and with West Asia, using Egypt as the gateway, as our guests have been saying. So it's a pivotal country, and we have to invest more in this relationship. That's the message. Keep thinking about Egypt and India, and do travel to Egypt soon. And until next time, I'll see you. Take care.